Welcome back to the Let's Talk Vibes podcast, where we speak soul contracts, illuminating the path to higher understanding. We're your hosts, Lauren and Yana, and this week we are joined by a fellow soul contract practitioner, Cheryl-lya Broadfoot. Welcome, Cheryl-lya.
Thank you for having me, and hello to everyone out there.
Wonderful. Well, driven by a mission to uplift individuals, support local communities, and give a voice to those who cannot speak for themselves, Cheryl-lya founded Soul's Compass. With roots in the health and wellness sector, she's trained in various healing modalities, including soul contract reading, stream therapy, divine healing, and angel healing. As a published writer and featured spoken word poet, Cheryl-lya's creative work has appeared in several publications. Alongside her healing practice, she freelances in project management for charities and coaches women in business, bringing spiritual balance and purpose to every team she works with. Wonderful bio. I mean, all I can think of when I hear that is like threes, 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 and an 18-9.
Ah,
Any fives, any sixes, 10 ones, none of those?
10 ones we've got, sixes. No, we've got two 10 ones, and no threes. Those come all in the
Really?
Well, look,
family
you've got
overlays.
sixes. Well, you've got sixes in the O's of your name. So
Yes,
the energy it definitely exists. What about the fives? You got an E, you got an H, you got your H.
No, so when you combine those together, the CH is a sh sound, which changes that slightly.
Yes, but that energy of that C and the energy of that H are clearly still present for you. That see when so and we're just getting into this, right? And we're gonna divert a little bit, but when something is showing up in your reality, when you're experiencing something, you know that though that frequency has to show up, it has to exist. And so if it's not in any combination of your name, then you know that H is at play or that E is at play. Because you've got the E.
Yeah.
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 Ease.
Yeah.
Yeah. E's.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yes.
So yeah. We're digressing a little bit, but that's okay.
Slightly. It's so exciting though when you get into it, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you know what? It's like when you meet somebody who also does this work and they also want to have this conversation, obviously with those threes, you could sit here and talk all day long. You could literally sit here and talk about it all day long and like not be done. And you're just like, we just gonna have to pin it because we all have to sleep and work. We have families, but because we're so passionate about it and we enjoy it so much, it's so easy to invest your time in something like that because it's like no work at all. It's like the greatest part of your day. So, yeah. Okay, so today we're here to talk about name optimization, but Cheryl-lya, why don't you let us know, like, how did you get into soul contracts?
Well, for that, we have to go back. Where are we now? Almost 15 years ago.
Wow.
And I had a wonderful career in human resources. I was an employee relations specialist. So, it was restructures, redundancies, training, seeing people at their worst, hiring, firing, you name it, all over the place. And I hadn't sort of come across soul contract reading. I dabbled, a bit of Reiki, a bit of angel healing, sort of some of the things in there. And I knew from the bottom of my soul, I just wasn't fulfilled. There was something that was not right. Couldn't put my finger on it. And I knew I had to get out of the corporate world. Come hell or high water, I was not, the phrase square peg in a round hole fits in. Fantastic career in HR. It really served me well, gave me a brilliant grounding. Not for me. There was something in there that my soul was screaming out, this is not, can't be confined in here. So I started on a journey and went, well, if I'm not doing this, what do I do? And it was like the night descended instantly. Dark, cold, scary. How do we do this? Because everyone in my family, they're sporty, they're athletic, they're competitive, they're very much on totally opposite to spiritual path. And there's me. I come along as the psychedelic sheep of the family. And everything with me is pink, fluffy, woo-woo. And, they've been telling me for years, got to do this. You're not strong enough. You're not this, you're not that. You're not going to survive out in the world. And I have this amazing career that pays well, but that doesn't fit. So there I was, and very upset, didn't know what to do. There was a lot going on. There was stuff going on in my head that I couldn't fathom out. I didn't know where it was coming from, what was going on. All I could say was I felt alone. There was no one else. Who do I reach out to? Who's there to help? Nobody thinks my way. A few friends and what have you, thrown a bit of Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now my way, Esther Hicks, Esther and Jerry Hicks, I should say. We've got those kinds of things, but nothing hitting the spot, absolutely nothing. And I sat down there and I knew something had to change. And one night I just sat and I sort of said, oh, for God's sakes, universe, if you don't tell me now what's going on, I'm going to explode. I don't know. I've had enough. I'm at the end of this. And a friend had given me a whole bunch of magazines to sort of various spiritually related. And I hadn't got round to reading them, and the pile was massive. And I just flew my arms back, sat on the sofa and went, come on, I'm waiting. And I can tell you, I was about a foot away from that pile of magazines. All the windows were closed. They toppled over. The entire stack toppled over and opened up onto a page that had a picture of Nicholas David Mann and an article about soul contract readings.
Wow. That's wild.
Absolutely. And I sat there, and at first, it didn't twig, and I kept moaning at the universe. Oh, come on, give me a sign. I need that sign. Tell me what's going on. And there's this magazine sitting on the floor. And as I picked it up, there was something about Nicholas's face that I thought, I need to know what this man is about. I kind of grasped what the article is about. I get the numerology side of it. I get these things, but need to speak to him. So needless to say, I booked a reading. Oh my God, I walked out of that reading and thought, what has happened? I'm all for fluffy woo-woo and that, but this man just opened me up and laid everything out on a table. And I've got 4 9s in my birth name, because we're talking about name optimizations. So I've got 4 9s in my birth name, and he'd spoken to me about the trauma and the impact it has on my body. And I could go, yep, I can feel stuff in my body, but I've had this wonderful life, happy childhood, no trauma whatsoever. No, do not get this. Anyway, as you know, being readers yourself, there's a lovely set of actionable steps, and there's a lovely story of your life that goes through it. So you can't, and I thought, well, it's not going to hurt, give it a go. Needless to say, a year on from that reading, I had done level 1 and 2. And I'd started off on divine healing. And then a year after that, did my level 3 for practitioners. And off I went on this journey, still not understanding. And quite often I'd say to Nicholas, I get there's that, but in my personal reading was really much around trauma, and quite deep-rooted, serious trauma. And I thought, I can't see it. Until flash forward a few years later, and I had a terrible incident at work, and they said to me, seriously, you need to get help. And I went and spoke to a friend, and I got really upset about it. And she said to me, seriously, you're stressing me out. You need to calm down with this. It's only a good friend can tell you to do.
Yeah.
And I sat there, and in that instant, I thought, oh my God, I do not want to stress anyone out. That's not a nice thing to do at all. I don't recognize that side. Where is this coming from? So I booked in with a counselor, found a lovely lady, and went through it, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, there was a diagnosis of complex PTSD. that had been suppressed. And those nines suddenly went, hello, we're here to teach you something. And just by the way, you've got to not only learn this, but you've, got to step into this. This is your, it's your physical goal here. We've got to release all this trauma. So hello. And then, of course, it's kind of unraveled. You can hear I've got a bit of an accent. I grew up in South Africa, moved across to the UK 24 years ago. And of course, I'm living history of going through the apartheid era, which was not very pleasant for anybody, and certainly not for most of the majority of the population. But through that and through witnessing sort of serious events and, really cataclysmic changes, I suddenly realized things that we grow up with that seem perfectly normal, when you say that to the rest of the world, are tragic, horrific.
Right.
And once you see that, you can't unsee it. And then, although I've done a lot of work with the soul contract readings and as a practitioner, and I've, done everything that was sort of expected of me, it was only at that point when I started dealing with that trauma that really those shifts came, and everything Nicholas said went like little pennies dropping in my head and went, I get it now. And it's not an overnight thing. It's not going to go away. This is my life journey. This is a long-term thing that I'm going to be dealing with. But I get it. And now I understand I can actually do something about it.
Wow.
So that is the long story of how I got in and through soul contract readings.
Wow. Your story is the beginning part of it, where you're in a great job and financially you're good and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden you're like, but this is not what I want, but I don't know what is next. That was my journey too. And soul contracts is the thing that was next. And so I totally resonate and I totally get that, because it's scary. All the doors start closing in front of you and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Why would I be crazy enough to give up something awesome? But you know that you have to do it. And like you being the only person in my family who was spiritual and like that kind of stuff, although my mother embodied some of that, it was like nobody understood why I was doing the thing I was doing. Yes. And a part of me didn't even understand it, but it just felt like the right thing to do. I knew on a soul level, this was it. And like you, when I actually saw the first time I ever learned about soul contracts, I was like, oh, I need to know everything about this. Don't know why, don't care. I just need to dive in. And so here we are. So crazy.
Yeah.
And for me, what like stood out to me as part of that story was that sense of, you sometimes don't realize with those nines, the impact that they've had in your life. Like I had that same sort of feeling, and have I been disempowered? I don't know, and it really came in during the readings. And I really am someone who had a very, good childhood in a lot of ways, but you just sort of realize the little things, right? And it's not something that creates, PTSD, but it's just this, it's normal, right? It's so normal to us in society. And I think we're kind of seeing now with parents that they're changing this a little bit, but that we just think, I am the parent, I am the one who's in charge. And like, I'm going to make this decision, and just sort of realizing all those things that happen. And you just think, well, that's normal because I was a kid and that's what happens to kids. It's like, but that's still you not getting to have your own power in that moment. This was someone who was, having control of your life in a degree, just in, because they're the parent and they get to make the decision. So, that was the part that to me, I was like, yes, I get it.
Okay, shall we get into name optimizations?
Yeah. And so I was going to say, the reason that you and I first connected is actually Barbara Schaefer-Berner, who was also our podcast guest. When I was at one point reaching out to her and asking her some questions, she was like, this is who you need to talk to. This is the woman who taught me everything I know about name optimization. And that's how you and I first connected a few months ago. And so I can't wait to hear what you have to say about name optimization. Now, for those who are hearing this term for the first time, and we certainly brought it up on the podcast before, but for those who are a little new to it, simply put, name optimization is an intentional name change, looking at the energies of your birth chart. Where do they need some help? Where do they need some support? Where do you need some more tools to help you work through that? Are you feeling kind of stuck with these energies, right? You need some help with them. But also, what is the life that you're trying to build? Who is the person that you are trying to become? And what energies will support you on that path? And so then we really look at that and really intentionally call in a new name with the energies that are going to most help to support you on your journey. For you, and how did you first kind of, in some ways, maybe kind of become a little bit of this expert on name optimization? When did it first call to you?
Do you know, I couldn't tell you. I still don't see myself as an expert, to be very honest. It's because it's a lifelong journey of learning, it's sort of keeping that open. So when I hear the word, oh, you're an expert, I sort of think, am I? Is that me? But clearly, yes, so got along there. So through the course of my own soul contract readings and learning to be a practitioner, I kind of thought, because I don't know if anyone knows, and I'm sure you will have mentioned this as well, but your birth name, the one that comes out on your birth certificate, is kind of like the cake of your life. So each of those little letters in there, the capital letters, the letters that squish together are the same as eggs and milks, and putting it all together, blending into this cake. And if our life comes out, the cake of life comes out slightly bitter, we kind of think, oh, a lot of us tend to think, well, there's not much to do. We could just got to accept it. We'll sort of go on with this. But it takes a lot to realize you can step out of that. There are things you can do. You can't change the batter that's in there. You can't change the physical cake. You can't take the eggs out once it's baked. But you can change the taste. So a name optimization is very much like the icing on the cake. So it's like, now we know that cake's maybe not exactly tasting the way we want to do. A name optimization says, do we want it a bit sweeter? Do we maybe want to put a savory flavor on there? Do we want, sort of something a little bit better? And name optimizations are beautiful because you can go from something that's a little bit not what I want to, wow, this is amazing. And doing name optimizations in the right way to have, to unlock our goals, to make sure that we're stepping into that that spiritual fulfillment, we're stepping into our soul destiny, is about that icing on the cake. And the soul destiny, when you get it right, is the cherry on the cake. So that's sort of in a nutshell. And suddenly, because of these 4 9s in my name, when all of that triggered off in my brain and went, what do I do? There has to be something I can do. I was in a very negative space because we don't know, because it's suppressed. The lid's on that. You don't, I didn't know my cake was bitter, until this whole contract opened up. So through learning that, I started thinking about, well, what is it I want from life? What are the things that will really, really give me that get up and go, that kind of North Star? Where are we going? Because we need to reach for something higher than ourselves. We need to step into that soul destiny. But how am I going to do it with a bitter cake? Ta-da! Name optimization. We're going to put some lovely icing on there. So with having 4 9s in my name, it took a lot of working through and going, okay, does this meet where I want to go? Does this flow through all areas of my life? Is it going to have an impact on my family? Is it going to have an impact on my work? There's all these little bits to juggle around. And thankfully, a career in human resources and being a project manager, my brain is kind of wired to look into those very details and to see how that all flows through and how we make that icing. So I spent a lot of time with Nicholas again, going, And Nicholas going, but is that clear? Are you clear? You go, I think so. No, I'm not. Now I want this. Now I want that. I don't know. What do I do? And eventually settling on that North Star for me, which was about, let's get empowerment. Let me step into that goddess side of me, that nurturing, mothering side of me that really puts everything gently in its place, holds it, and gives everybody that ability to express who they are, to work through those nines. So optimized my name, and it's not the full name as you see on there. There is a middle name in there, which brings all those energies down and unlocks the power of the 4 nines. So my optimized name has another 4 nines in it. So I'm quite
Whoa.
yeah, it was actually Barbara who sent a cartoon a few years ago that pops up on my Facebook, and I share it every time because it makes me laugh, of a little dragon breathing fire on a human, and the human's going, but why? And the dragon's going, because I love you.
I love
That is
that.
the
Oh my
9.
goodness.
And that is me, through and through. Unfortunately, with 8 nines, the power of 8 dragons behind me, I'm a bit of a force to be reckoned with, especially when I get angry. But part of that empowerment journey is learning how to balance that out, how to manage that. And a lot of what I did was around, because I've also got a 13-4 in my birth name.
That's what I thought you were going to say. You added to help those 9s, that 13-4.
Yes. So we used some 13-4s to help there. Also, some of my karmics are 17-8s, so I don't speak very well. But funny enough, when we unlock our empowerment, we kind of get good at stuff. And suddenly being a spoken word poet from somebody who's just writing things and submitting blindly, hoping someone will take it, to actually speaking takes a lot of that power of the 9s. And it's taken a good 4 years to step into that. But the 13-4s were essential to balance out those 9s and to bring that balance and that calmness and that gentleness and that motherly feeling. I also picked up a little bit of the 11-2s. I nearly said 12-8s for some reason. Where that came from doesn't even exist. 11-2s in there to sort of build some structure around that, so we know, I can manage that, because 8 dragons is a lot. If you don't have a structure in place and a way to manage 8 dragons, it's you're going to be pulled in 8 different directions. So we've got to get all our dragons working together and flying in the same direction. So those sort of gentle things in there, and giving that structure and giving just a little bit of boundaries. I don't like boundaries. Nobody wants to be hemmed in. Hate it. I did an interview for some business networking groups about 3 years ago. And the lady who was interviewing me said, how do I feel about working by myself, being, on my own when I'm working? I said, I love it. I see going into the office as being like a battery hen, where you're just in your cubicle plopping eggs and off you go. When I do my own stuff, I'm a free range chicken.
Yeah.
And I am loving that. And without that kind of name optimization, without putting that sweetness, I can't step into my soul destiny, which is a 10-1. Big ask. And not only that, in my birth name, I have 2 10-1s. So there's a huge challenge. There's a huge ask to get there in this life. There's a lot to get through. But when you've got your name optimized and you're feeling good and you've got those energies flowing, and it takes a while to get them flowing, you start to see these teeny, tiny little changes. And for me, my journey, it was like a rusty old tap where we had to and then eventually a drop came through, and you're like, oh, great, 1 drop. It's better than I had before, but is this it? I've gone through all this work. Come on. And then, as that tap opens up and those energies flow, the stream of water comes flowing through. And that's why I say it's a lifelong journey. There's always something to learn, no matter how much we learn, grow, empower, there's always something that's going to come back. There's always
Right.
something to learn. And so it's I say, being complacent is, once you've done your name optimization, you can settle back and you feel safe and it's wonderful, but you can't be complacent because there is still this journey to go on. It's, there's no destination,
Well,
final
right. And that's like every part in life, right? Like you can say, oh, I want this abundance. I want to build this business. I want to have friends. I want relationships. Well, that's great. And it can come to you, but that doesn't mean you just get to sit on your butt and think that it's just going to magically appear. Right. And I think what's interesting about name optimization is, you touched on this before where you're like, what do I want to bring in? It's really important. Don't change your name just because this frequency sounds good and you just want more power. Well, what do you actually want to infuse into your life? What do you actually need more of? Where do you struggle and can you find that balance? So it's not as simple as I just want to change it to get all the good stuff. Because as we know, right, as you're bringing in these new frequencies, for those first 6 months or so, you're gonna feel that tough challenge aspect of the new frequencies. It's not like you change your name and life is fantastic, right? You still have to do the work. And so for me personally, I was very resistant to name optimization. I was like, I love my name. I would never change my name. And so it wasn't until level 3, which is the business side of soul contracts. And it was the last day of the last break. And I sat there and all of a sudden I got this bug up my butt that said, you're changing your name. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I'm sitting on the couch and I've got like 10 minutes left before break is over. And I'm like, okay, Spirit, help me figure out what do I want to bring in? Like what? And I kept hearing the song, Bring Me a Higher Love. And so I'm like, and in that moment, I'm like, get out of my head. I need to like resolve this. And then I realized, oh, higher love, higher soul contracts for the business. And because I didn't have a business name that I was sold on yet for my soul contract work. And then, so I'm like, okay, I'll check that out. And then what came in was I knew that I wanted love. Like love is the frequency I always want to embody. So I'm like, oh, I will not change my first name, not changing my last name, but I want to put in some kind of love into my middle name. And I think I went through like 55 versions of how to spell love, amor and amore and amora and like all this stuff. And we finally get to the break is over. And I'm like, Nicholas, I need to get this in because I know I have the experts right in front of me. Why would I do this on my own when the boss is here? And so we pull it up. Higher soul contracts. What did it bring me? It brought me a 13,477 and a 10,1. And I was like, okay, great. Then we get to Yana Amor Manocas. And there was a teacher assistant in there, Lauren Calvert, who helped. She's like, what about those H's? So she suggested these little tiny tweaks that shifted everything. And all of a sudden, we came down to 2 choices. And one was absolutely insane. And the second one was also insane, but just it had a little bit less of like the perfect energy. However, when the 2 were together, the one that was a little bit less, it brought in that 11-2 energy, which was that structure. And I have in my birth name, I have 11-2 spiritual goals. Now, for me, when I had my business and when I worked for somebody else, the structure was there. So for me, it was like, I can get things done, no problem. When you come into the spiritual side of things, or you have a spiritual business or that kind of stuff, there's no structure. You have to create that structure for yourself. And I had a tough time doing that. So I remember Nicholas goes, well, what do you want? And I'm like, I understand that this other one is like, whoa, you can't get any better, but I really need that structure. And so so it's not just about getting the most optimal energies, you want that, but you also have to make sure it's really helping you. And so I am now at a place where I have, from zero structure, I have created this beautiful structure where without it, I wouldn't be sitting here because I just couldn't get my life together to build my own structure. And so it's really, really important to understand what you want and what's really going to benefit you the most. Because this is I mean, you're shifting your reality. You are shifting what's showing up for you in your reality. And not only are you getting these beautiful energies, but are you ready to step up to it?
Yeah.
Right? You're not just going to sit back. You have to do the work. Are you ready to do the work to get to that next level? So there's just like so much and just so much to consider. But I mean, I am very glad that I did it now, but resistant to it for, 2 sessions or 2 trainings. I was like, not happening, not happening. And all of a sudden it was like, it's happening, but when that moment is right, you're going to know. So it's just wild how it played out.
Exactly. And it's, I sort of work with women starting up in business. So I have to straddle the world of spirituality along with the, this is the real world kind of
Right.
thing. And I sort of say, is it? But it's so important. What you're saying is, there's so much in there, because what people don't understand is that when you optimize your name and you're looking for those certain things that you're going to change in your life, you also change your story.
Mm-hmm.
And by changing your story, the people around you have to change as well, because your story has changed. And these are people you know and love. These are people that maybe don't like you, and everywhere in between. And part of that journey is navigating and understanding that people are not going to understand. I looked at, just before we jumped on this call, I looked at the sheet that I finally thought, okay, these are the ones that I'm happy with, and this is the one that I'm sort of where my optimized name came from. And that was in 2013. So we're now in 2024, okay? So that's what, 11 years. And in that time, my family does not acknowledge my optimized name at all.
Yes, same.
Absolutely. And it's painful, because part of what we're doing is looking for that identity. Who am I? Where do I fit in this world? Where am I in this plan? And it's identity is hugely important. The story of who we are is hugely important. So my family had to change their views on me, because suddenly, with the optimized name coming in and that heavy landing, and believe me, this was a heavy landing into it's like sort of trying to land an aeroplane without wheels on a sandy patch of mountain.
Yeah.
It was like kind of my landing into my name. And 11 years later, my family still struggle with that story. That, they accept me and they sort of like, yeah, no, she does weird stuff. It's, yeah, we kind of love her anyway. So, just let her get on with that. But, I would say to anyone thinking about a name optimization, it is difficult, and, you and I have both mentioned a lot of difficult things. But remember this, the rewards far outweigh the pain of getting there. Once it all comes together, there is nothing more beautiful. There is nothing more magical than when you sit there and you go, oh my gosh, this is working.
Yeah.
This is actually happening. And when those people whose stories change see you happy, see you living in a better way, see you growing and being who you are, nobody, no matter how negative they are, can take that away from you or say different or do anything, because
Right.
that is so true. It's so core to who you are. It's your soul speaking. And that's a truth that can't be denied.
Yeah. And what's interesting is this is why it's so important to be conscious when you're changing your name, because when women get married, How many of us have changed our name? Now, I was resistant because I love my own name, but it was really important to my husband. And so here I am 9 months pregnant. And you guys, it was 2021. I got to skip the line at the Secretary of State to get my license because I was pregnant. It was fantastic. That line was like miles long. And so I changed my name without really knowing what I was doing. I didn't know about the work. Okay. And so I changed my name in July. My daughter was born in August. And by December, my business was like max to the limit. Like I couldn't fit any more children in my center. People were coming out of the woodwork everywhere. But then I also had burnout at some point, and then I got divorced. So what did I bring? I brought in 2 sets of 4 4s, not knowing 2 sets of 4 4s, 2 sets of 7 7, 2 sets of 12 3s, and that soul destiny was a 10 1. And I was like, oh, once I learned about this system, I was like, oh, there was my life in a nutshell, not understanding what was happening. And so that is why it's so, so, so important to know what you're doing and to make sure you realize, because sometimes, as we know, when you change your name, it can make the cake more bitter. Life can get a lot more harder, more challenging. It can get sweeter. It can be awesome. Or maybe there's just no really good or bad. It just is what it is. That's why understanding that is like a game changer. So I crack up every time I look at that married name because I'm just like you see it, like the proof is in the pudding, like it's there. You see it play out before you, and it just cracked me up. Yeah.
And, with that, like, as we're talking about some of these challenges, right? Like, one thing that we see with many people who will optimize their name, certainly not everybody, not to freak people out, but like a lot of people will end up getting divorced, right? That's something that happens. And I mean, different things happen. And, one of the things that I think about as we talk about it can be challenging, but after it's sweet is that, here we are, we're asking for our lives to change. But I think for a lot of people, they're like, oh, but I want to be comfortable the whole time. It's like, I want to just be completely comfortable through the whole change process. But that's often not really how change works. At a job I had previously, we used to say, discomfort is where the growth happens, and so what happens is like you ask for change, you ask to become this person that you want to be. It's like, well, some discomfort is going to come along with that because it's asking you to grow. It's asking you to change. And there might be something that's in your life right now that needs to leave for you to become this person that you want to be. And if you're not willing to let it go, a lot of times you start this process, the universe kind of just is going to take it away. Or it just becomes really obvious to you. It's like you were just so used to it before, right? Like those 9s that you had. I didn't know that this was going on. It suddenly just turns the light on to what was there all along. Oh, I wasn't seeing the truth of who you were before. I wasn't acknowledging the truth of how I felt before, whatever that case may be. And so a lot of times, things will happen that before the process, you might have been like, oh, I don't want that. Right. It's like, well, this is the road. This is the path, or this is maybe how we get there sooner rather than 15 years from now, you realize, oh, this isn't the right person. You're going to realize it now. And so it is really, wild, just the power of this and to impact your life. And, I think going into it with just being open-minded and embracing and, I talk about this so much, the tower moments, for those who know tarot, those tower moments, things crumble. But after the tower comes the star. That is your hope. That is your rebuild. That is something very positive and that you love to see. But things had to crumble before you got there. So that's just the thing with this, right? It is challenging, but just embracing, okay, I'm just going to embrace what's happening. I had a friend, client, working with, we optimized her name. And I mean, it was one of those things like watching and witnessing and being like, oh my goodness, did I mess up your life through this optimization? Like, oh my God, I was feeling so responsible. But, both of us were just like, okay, this is obviously we're having the faith and the trust that what's going to come from this is going to be really beautiful. And sure enough, she's like, I could not have even imagined this life for myself. Before we began this, I couldn't have even imagined it's so much better than I could have even hoped for or thought to have hoped for. And so you just have to really have that trust, that faith, and that perseverance when you're going through this process.
Absolutely. And, Lauren, when you were talking, it sort of reminded me that when we're going through these changes, when we're choosing the things we want to be or we think we want to be, it's about getting that so crystal clear and letting your soul lead with that, feeling it within your soul, because when it lands, it's like all the pieces of the puzzle come together instantly, and you can feel it in your soul. And a lot of people think, oh, I want the really good stuff, and I'm going to sit here, and that's what I want, but I'm not going to move from here. And that gap gets bigger and bigger and more daunting. And if you how can I say this? You can't get to where you're going if you don't move from where you are now.
Yeah.
And you've got to think that in front of me, those energies, that person that I want to be, how do they wake up every morning and get where they're going? Because if you're thinking from that perspective, and you're clear enough and you can get that perspective of, this is my 13 force. This is who I want to be. This is the gentleness, this power's this unlocked. You have to change and shift into those energies, and you have to close that gap, because it's not going to happen with the thinking you've got now. Those changes are going to come from you thinking in future you, to put it that way, and closing that gap. And it was just so lovely to hear you say that, because I was talking amongst friends on the weekend about this very thing, about saying, your habits have to change, your focus has to change, everything about you. And, we've all said from the beginning, there's work to be done. And there is a beauty in that journey. And if, a lot of people find it daunting because it's such a big leap. And I say, break that down into baby steps, get there, little stepping stones. I know, I'm sure Barbara can tell you, Nicholas can tell you, everyone who's worked with me and was studying with me at the same time will tell you, I just wanted to leap into that person down there. But at that stage, I had no clue that, sort of like I had to move from where I was. You can't cling to the shore and try and get to the island out to sea. You kind of have to let go and swim. So, it's that baby thing. If you're stuck, think of that future you and that person, those energies that they embodied, and go, how do I connect into that and live from that point of view? How do I sort of feel my body move into that person and fly forward?
Yeah. And so what you're making an excellent point, which is, who is the person you want to be? Okay. How do they feel? What's important to them? What's going on with them? Even though right now that person may feel different from who you are in this moment, start to consciously embody those emotions and that energy and that frequency. As you embody the frequency of what you think this awesome new distant version of yourself is, you're bringing that closer to you, right? And that is part of doing the work. It's this mindset shift. Okay. And there's this level of consciousness availability that also helps you do it. Because if somebody had said to me 5 years ago, your life would be here, or you would think this way, I'd be like, you're out of mind. Because when you're not ready for the information, it jumbles you. You don't understand it. You kind of just look past it. When you are consciously at a level where you can understand how things play out, why they play out, how to move and shift with the energy, all of a sudden they'll be presented to you. And then you have to do that work. Again, I hate saying that word work, because you're just like, well, I don't want to always work unless you've got like a 20-2 in your, like a goal aspect. You don't ever want to retire, and that's totally fine.
Or a 21-3. That's just like, got to do it the hard way.
Totally. Totally. But one really important part of this optimization process too is that business name, right? When
Yes.
you're also creating a business name, well, that's a whole other set of frequencies specific to your business. Is there resonance within your chart and your business chart? And then if you look at the energies of your business name, what is that bringing in for you? And so really recently I had this man, he booked just a birth chart reading. And we're going through it. And the whole
Yeah.
time he's just looking down and he's shaking his head. And I'm thinking to myself, am I not getting, like, he's not saying much. And, and so I say to him, how much of this actually resonates? He's like, all of it. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, because he wasn't giving me anything. And then, so we get to like the last 5 minutes and he tells me, we got a little bit more into detail with what he does for work. And just for kicks, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, give me your business name. So we pull it up and I see this big 5-5 in there. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if you've ever thought about optimizing it, but this 5 frequency in a business name, it brings in this niche. And I said to him, unless your workshops are like, $5,000 a person where you don't need that many people and you're okay with a few. And he just starts laughing. And I'm like, why? He goes, I charge $22,873 for my workshops.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I was like, okay, well then I guess if that's the business model you want, like you are good, And he's like, no, he goes, I want to simplify the workshop to get more people in. And so the price is not that high. So he literally, before I knew it, he booked in and we did this awesome business optimization. And so that is the point. It served its for him specifically, it served his purpose. And now he's like, now I want to evolve to that next step. He probably was never going to get there with those 5s in there. So it's about, well, okay, what do you want to do now? What does that fully embody? And bringing in those energies. So tweaking the spelling, changing the name, everything about it is going to shift the energy of your business as well. So that is a huge important component of this name optimization for your business, because your business is an extension of yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I sit there with my clients, and the first thing I say to them is, you are your business. You are a walking, talking, living, breathing expression of your business. If you're having a good day, your business is having a good day. If you're having a bad day, your business is having a bad day. So, we can't always have good days every day. We need some of the bad things to remind us that there's blessings and we have to be grateful for things in the world. But with business naming and this, oh, you're right up my street. We'd need another 3 hours for me.
Yeah.
So stop me if I go too far. But the business naming, when it comes to, we spoke about the cake of your life. We spoke about the name optimization as the icing on the cake of your life, which can, go any which way of good, not so good, or neutral. The same thing with business. That energy has a complete and utter influence on your name. So you can do a name optimization, but if you're working for yourself and you've got your own business, those energies have to align. And it doesn't go just through with the business name. It has to filter through to your website. It has to filter through to the workshops that you do. It has to filter through to every aspect of your business, that you need to sort of have those energy flows coming up in one way or another. Now, as I said, we can't be happy all the time. Life's doesn't work like that. There are curveballs. So having an optimization and having those energies flowing through, if you've worked through it and there's a name that you like, energetically works, but maybe your clients won't get to it and they want something that's a little bit different, so you haven't got that name, that's fine. Get it aligned as closely as you can, because you need those energies to flow through. But then plan and prepare for the eventualities that are going to come up so that you can handle them and navigate them like a pro. Because you're going to have all these energies with you. You're going to have all these tools in your toolbox, from knowing your birth name, knowing your optimized name, business naming is crucial, and I'll tell you why. Before I optimized my business name, I do a lot of freelance work, and I didn't have a name. It was just, whatever I have to do to put on the tax return and keep the tax man happy. Who needs a name? Right. So now I've done some phenomenal projects, worked on amazing projects. And I can tell you two things happen. They're either phenomenally fantastic or they're phenomenally awful, totally awful. And I sort of went, where is this polarity? Why? I need a little bit of middle ground. I need happiness somewhere along the way. We just need a little plateau. And then when I started running through the projects and the businesses that I was working with, running their names through and looking at the energy flows and how it works that way, oh my goodness, every single one of them had 9 nines. And suddenly I went, oh my goodness, these 9 nines are not just in the business name, they're right at the karmic clash points. So no wonder my dragons are fired up and fire breathing, raising villages as they go along, because the energies of those businesses are doing exactly, they're rubbing us up the wrong way. Me and my dragons don't like that. We like we like to fly and hold people close and keep them safe. And so I sort of sat down and went, right, I need a business name. This has to stop. I need that sort of sense of balance in my life. And I need to understand where the problems are going to be so that I can plan and prepare for as much as I can. You can't plan and prepare for everything. There will be curveballs. It's life, that happens. But you can as much as possible. So off I embarked on my business naming journey, and my level 3, I think Nicholas, at one point I did think, oh my goodness, I mean, he's a lovely, wonderful gentleman. He would never do this, but I thought, I think I've broken him with all the questions. I think I've actually cracked through everything. And of course I hadn't. Nicholas is a pro at these things. He's seen me and people like me for decades coming through. But once I had my name, my business name optimized, so suddenly the projects that I started getting a lot more of the ones I did like.
Yeah.
Because I could see those things coming through. Now, sometimes life says you have to pick something that doesn't work for you because, at the end of the day, we've all got bills to pay. So sometimes you have to, but if you understand those energies, if you understand what the problems are going to be, you can actually navigate that. And sometimes you can even go in and fly in under the radar with people who are not spiritual and don't want spiritual stuff. They want cutthroat business, give us KPIs, key performance indicators, make everyone work. And you can go through and you can say, yeah, we can do all of that. That's not a problem. We can absolutely do that. But how about thinking about this in a different way? Is there maybe a better way of doing this? Is there maybe doing the same thing, but changing or tweaking a few things so that your people, your staff can feel that sense of relief and go through? And suddenly you can start changing those mindsets to going, well, actually, yes, maybe that rigid business focus, make sure your marketing's up to date, everything in your pipeline. Have you got enough clients? Are you going to do this? Can then sort of go to, yeah, we've got all of this. We need this. But how can we put the client front and center? How can we build a castle, a home that serves and is aligned to our personal visions, that aligns to the business visions? And how can we get those energies flowing through? We can't make all people happy all the time, but we can try and make as many happy and balanced and safe as we can in any given situation. So having a business name aligned, having your workshops aligned, knowing who those people are for. In business parlance, for anyone who's out there, vision, mission, value statements are key. We do them slightly different when doing soul contract reading, because we're talking about things that excite us and lead to our soul. So my North Star, my focus when I get up is the word service. How am I serving any of my clients?
Well, hello, 10-1 Soul Destiny.
Exactly. And that is why business naming is so important. If you go onto my website now, you'll see a lot of the spiritual stuff is leaving, unfortunately, because a lot of the charitable work that I do, supporting charities and working with charities and community, and that is coming through. And my clients are now needing to see things in a different way. What they don't know is behind the scenes, there's a lot of overlays going on and going, is this matching? Are we getting this right? Test, 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 operate, operate, operate. And once we get it right, we can move it through. Because the clients that I want, the clients that are right for me, are going to feel those energies. And for anybody on this call, if you can get that going, if you can flow through everything, your business name, your website, the products or services that you offer, whatever you're doing, if you can get those energies through there and aligned to your personal soul destiny or vision, depending how you see it, same thing, sort of. In our world, we know our soul destiny and the vision is the same thing. But if you can get those aligned, if you can get those energies flowing, it makes it a lot easier to plan and run your business. And I have to say time and time again to clients, there is nothing unspiritual about planning. We need to have that in. A business plan is different to a strategic plan. Business plans, old style bankers, what have you. Strategic plan is how we get things done in the foreseeable future to meet that vision. But in our life, there's the dull and boring plans that have to be done to pay the bills. And then there's the ones that serve our souls. Getting those aligned, getting those energies flowing adds to the sweetness of the cake. So it might be that, your business is like the extra bit of sauce on the side or that lovely dollop of ice cream on the side of your cake. It changes the taste as well. It changes the way you do things. But it's important step to go through. It's important to have all of these energies aligning and flowing. And I can
Well, it's also the place where like the energies from your own name play out, right? It becomes the environment for you to work through those energies as well. And I think, again, kind of going back to when we were talking about with the name optimization, in order to get to where you go, you have to kind of allow that tower moment, right? To get to that star. You have to navigate that discomfort. I think sometimes we forget, we can kind of get so caught up in things that we forget. It's like, well, we came here to work through some lessons and some challenges. Like that is the aim, right? So again, about embracing that discomfort, allowing yourself to be uncomfortable or for something to be a challenge, because that's what our souls came here to experience and to do. So it's actually such a blessing, right? That's why we want that connection, because it also is going to allow you to do exactly what your soul came here to do. Whatever those numbers happen to be in your chart indicate what that would be, But for example, for myself, something that, I've thought a lot about because I have physical karma 7-7. And, we tend to think about, oh, afraid of being seen. You're kind of needing to get comfortable being seen. And I'm like, I really feel like I did that. Like, it's not like it never comes up. And I have to always sort of have that internal questioning. Oh, am I being afraid of being seen right now? But it doesn't feel like this big issue that is still challenging me. And yet it's now, first of all, sevens are a great energy to have in business, right? Because they're so magnetic. It's a great place. So that's great for me. I know it's going to help me work through that. But also with my optimized name that has a 9-9 physical karma, that 9, that catalytic 9, that fire breathing dragon 9 is really burning through that karma. So I've been thinking, what's it burning through? What's still there, right? Because I mean, yeah, the being seen, okay, sure. The isolation, I think, is one of the things when I think about it. But the other realization I had recently was the control, right? Sevens are so controlling. And I was like, ooh, that's the thing that is still very present and needed to be worked on. And so then once you have that realization, right, then you can start to ask yourself those questions. Ooh, am I needing to let go of control? Is this an opportunity to let go of control? And hey, sometimes with any of it, right? Sometimes you're like, I am afraid to be seen right now, and that's okay. I'm not quite ready to push myself so far that in this exact circumstance and moment, I'm going to put myself out there to be seen, or to let go of that control. Again, whatever that specific number and challenge is for you, it's okay sometimes to be like, I am not ready in this moment, but now I have the awareness. And next time, that answer might be yes. Now I'm ready. Now I'm ready to take that step. And it's maybe a little scary. There's a little hesitancy, but you navigate through that, And so that's,
Yeah.
again, one of the big reasons to connect it into you. I mean, so that again, it is connected to you. It's part of you, because otherwise we talk about a disconnect. Those energies aren't there, but also it gives you this opportunity to continue to grow and reach the potential, the goals, the lessons that you've come to learn and to experience.
Absolutely. And that's so valid, Lauren, because I remember when I started out, because I've got karmic 17/8, so to speak my voice and my mind was not a good thing. I did it in completely the wrong way. And communication's a big factor, and hence me going into spoken word poetry to do that. But one of the things that I've learned through my business, through all of this, and through optimizing the names, is that communication is going to be a lifelong journey. We get it right. First, I can talk about soul contract readings. Woohoo! Then I can talk about name optimizations. Yeah. Then I can talk about business naming. Woohoo! But now I have to go out there and talk to CEOs and people who are bigger than me. Oh,
Well, that's where those
oh,
nines help you.
absolutely. And for a long time, I didn't know those nines were there. So we had to learn how to fire up the nines and how to get them to swap and change, to go, we can't, like I said, the little cartoon earlier, I can't go in there and raise a CEO. I'll never have work again. But now I have to learn to sort of get that flame like a little tea light for some things, and maybe a barbecue level for something else. And that's that journey that we go on. And everything you said is so important, because we grow. And just when we think we've got something right, soul contract in the universe says, oh, brilliant, you've graduated to the next level. There we go. Let's give you the next challenge on your journey to where you're going. Woo! And something that just sort of struck me while you were talking as well, Lauren, we sort of all said we don't like the word work. And I suddenly realized, no, we don't like the word work. It's a growth opportunity. It's a chance to learn. It's one of these things that does involve effort, let's put it that way. But if we think about it of going, yay, we've graduated through, let's grow to the next level. I think, kind of a lovely way to show that journey and progress.
Now,
Yeah.
before we wrap up today, I want to spend at least a few minutes chatting about what are some of the challenges that someone might have in their birth chart, and give sort of some examples of how what energies could be brought in to help them. And Yana kind of hinted before about, those 13 fours, did you bring the 13 fours? And I think the 13-4 is a really excellent number for most optimized names, because it can help so many of those numbers, right? The 13-4 can really help to soften, for example, nines, those, or a 10-1. I always think there's a really beautiful balance between the masculine energy of 10-1, the feminine energy of 13-4. It can help numbers to feel loved from that 4 energy coming in, help to bring trust to numbers that might need some trust to come in. But also like the 21-3, you think about doing things the hard way. Well, the 13-4, I always think is, let's do it the easy way, so it becomes this really nice balance. And so that's just, I would say, just one example of how one number can come in and help and influence. What for you are some other really, I guess, maybe strategic, not strategic, but ones where you're like, okay, we're going to bring this in. This is going to help you in these challenges that kind of stand out for you?
So I talk a lot from the power of the nines because I
Mm.
have them. So we do need to soften those because those can be very disempowering, if not for ourselves, for those around us. So you're quite right to say bring those softer energies in. But I think the most important thing is thinking about what is it I want to get out from this life? What is it? And bringing those energies in because some people may not want a softer 13-4. They might want to structure that in another way. So it's again very personalized to the person sitting in front of you because the souls come in to learn and grow and do its thing while we're here. So for me, the first thing is putting that person in front of me, front and center, and saying, what is it you would like to achieve? Where are we going with this? What is that North Star that we're heading towards? What is your soul destiny going to say? Yep, this is what we need. So there's I sort of just trying to rack my brains through clients and years of things and sort of thinking I actually can't grasp on one right now. But sort of working through those sort of softer things, and I go back to the business naming. Because when you're working with other people, you want to bring those energies in, you want to overlay them. But sometimes, I'm not saying it's a good thing in all the time, but sometimes it is nice to have that little clash because it reminds you, oh, I've got a bit of work to do. I need to step back. I need to work out who I am in this situation, who I am in everything's unfolding. And then, are those numbers right for me? Those ones that I've decided, is this the right combination for me? Because I would say, two things. If there's nines in your chart, soften them. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Whichever
because
way you can.
it feels like for you, you love that, like that challenge or that the roughness or that power of that nine. You're like, I want to keep that. I think most people are like, I need to like lessen that, right? And then like when we
Yeah.
think about different frequencies, like people who are like, I don't want to work for other people. I want to be an entrepreneur. You bring in that 11 too. You bring in that 6. I need more creativity. You bring in more 6s, 3s, 9s. I want to be able to speak. I love to write. How can I get that? Bring in your 3s, bring in your 5s, but it all depends for everybody. Another really important component of all that too is when you're optimizing your name. For me, I'll use me as an example. There was a 13-4 that showed up in my optimized name. I believe it was talents. Yes, it was physical talents. And so I was like, hold on a second, Nicholas. I can't do that yet because my daughter has a 13-4. And I had to go back and look to see where it was. Because if I were, let's say, to bring in a 13-4, that mother wound energy, right? In a karmic placement, and my daughter also had it there, it would just create this friction. It would not be a nice set. And so when we actually looked at the chart, we both actually had it in a talent position, which again, just because it's talent doesn't mean you're not going to get any of the challenge aspect.
No.
But the overall energy of it is positive, right? Like you're going to step into that positive aspect. So it's really important to bounce those energies against the other people in your life to make sure you're not making it tougher between you and them. So there's so much that goes into it. This is why it's important to work with somebody who has done this, who understands it, who can look at all the charts and can easily go boom, boom, boom. And I remember like when I was in level 1 training, the first thing that, because I got 11 too, so for me, like it takes me a minute for things to settle in. And I just remember sitting there going, God, I can't wait until the moment where I can just look at a chart and all the information comes. I don't have to prep. I don't have to like try and like dig to see what these numbers mean. And so now to be able to be in that spot where you're like, oh, this makes complete sense. Like everything you're saying is, to know it, that's what you
Yeah.
need. You need to make sure you have somebody who really understands because you're shifting your life. And I
Yeah.
also think that our soul is actually the one helping shift into this optimized name. Because if we weren't ready, it would not happen. And so, just the way our soul chooses our birth name, our soul is also helping push this new name change to bring in or to experience whatever is to come from these new energies. So there's just so much that goes into it. It's like, it's so powerful and so magical, but it's very, very soul driven, very soul driven.
Absolutely. And that's why everything has to go towards that soul destiny. Yeah. And as you were talking, it reminded me of a client I finally got there. She had some 5/5s in her name, and all she wanted was some 9s. Wow. All she wanted is that power. I need to do this. I need to. And it got to sort of a year later of this constant, like, I really need this, of me going, I can assure you, trust me from the bottom of my heart, you do not want 9s, not with the 5/5s. Right. I can assure you. So I sort of thought, how am I going to make this clear? Because when the energies lock, we can burn through those karmic lessons and we can get to where we're going. But when there's a number like a 5/5, and remember, no number's better or stronger or more powerful than any other number. They're just different energies. That's all it is. But when there's a gentle, loving, thoughtful, lost in the world, airy fairy little 5 floating around, it's the power of a dragon is not going to work. It's going to burn you out. It's going to bring you to the ground. And it's not going to be a happy time. And I said to her, are you sure you want to do this? So it's fine. So I gave her 3 different names, 2 that I knew would work wonderfully. And I said, one with the 9s in that she wanted. And I said, we're going to come back to the 2 other names. But for now, take the next 3 months and live from the perspective of a 9. Be a fiery dragon. 3 weeks later, 3 weeks. Can we look at the other 2 names, please? I said, yep. Absolutely. So that's why I say everybody in front of you is different. When I sit back, I'm looking at energies flowing through. Maybe I'm just looking at sort of one of the sheets that I pulled there with my family analysis through there. And there are 7 sheets of names.
7 different charts of names.
7 different charts. Not 7 different charts, 7 pages.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so how many fit?
That's like 35. It's like 5 per page. So it's like
35. Yeah.
Yes. And I stick those on the wall.
Yeah.
And I step back. It takes me a long time to do an overlay reading, an optimization, or a business name or something. Because first I've got to listen to what the person in front of me wants and hear for their soul what they want. Then I have to work through what they actually need, because a lot of times people come through with what they think they want, but what they actually need is something different. And you can't tell somebody that. You have to let them learn that and find that part. That's part of the learning and the growing. It would be a disservice to take that away. But while we're doing that, I have these charts pasted up on the wall, and I will take a week, 2 weeks, sometimes a month, just to sit with those energies and sort of work out where we're going with that, what's happening with that. If that works that way, how is it going to affect this family member? If we bring in a business name, how is that going to affect the children? How is that going to affect the grandparents? How is that going to affect everyone that I've got on this chart between us? So it's shifting through and making sure that that energy is flowing. Because if there is a clash, because remember at the very beginning, we said when you optimize your name, you change your story and it affects the people around you at home, at work, at school, socially, wherever you are. This is why it takes so much time to make sure that that energy is flowing as best as we can possibly get it. And if we're not taking that time, it can cause problems later down the line.
Yeah.
And that is why we need to be very, very careful and make sure that when we're working with that person, they understand. Because when that lovely client took her 9s over her 5s, I said, these are the good things to look at, because there's loads of good things, and it's going to come. But these are the things to be wary of. If any of these things happen, whatever you're doing, you get in touch with me immediately, because we need to work through that. That's, and I will only give you that name if you promise. Otherwise there will be consequences, in a lovely way.
Of course.
And it's that stepping back and making sure that those energies are flowing and working through and making sure so that that story changes. And it's then again, once we work with that name and that name settles and the person's happy with that and they feel it in their soul and they feel those pieces coming together, that we then sort of sit down and we do a plan, because things are going to change. They're not going to be the same.
Oh, yeah. All this 5 and 9 talk is remind me of Amanda's episode, which was the 5-5, where she's like, what are you going to do with all the power? And it's true. It's like people just saying, I want the most powerful thing, but you really have to understand what you're asking for. And so it is our job to make sure we really do a good job at explaining that to them and really laying it out. And so, but thank you for all that. I mean, it's a lot of work, and you saying I put all the charts out. I mean, like, I could just absolutely picture you doing that, and it's just so beautiful. So thank you for sharing how this works for you and how you share that with your clients. I mean, it's just beautiful. There's so much into name optimization, whether it's personal or business or any of that. And so, definitely way more to dig into. But thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure. Why don't you let our listeners know where they can find you?
Right. So easiest way to find me is I do have a website, which is www.soulscompass.net. And easy way to make sure you're there is look for the little pink dragon logo. She's lovely. She's my magic pink dragon. On my website, currently it's changing, but there is a contact form. If anybody's listening and want to get in touch and ask something, soul contract reading, or see how we can work together or that, my email is hello@soulscompass.net. So that's hello@ SOULS compass COMPASS.net. And just put in there, want to know a little bit more about soul contract readings. And I can then send you a link to book some time in the calendar, and we can sort of take it from there.
Beautiful.
Wonderful, everybody. Let us know what you think of name optimization. Has it piqued your interest? Does it feel like a no-go for you? I think we all kind of start there. I was the same as Yana, like never. And then I did it. So let us know what you think, or about business names. If you would want to know what's in your business name, head over to Instagram, Let's Talk Vibes Podcast, or our website, theltvpodcast.com.
And as always, everybody, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment on our content. It is the best way to support us, and we greatly appreciate it. Have a beautiful, blessed day. Bye, everybody.